Welcome to Korea Today, live from Seoul.
Red Cross officials from the two Koreas are set to meet on the 5th in the truce village of Panmunjom in hopes of agreeing to a date for inter-Korean reunions for families separated by the Korean War.
Prosecutors say lawmaker Lee Seok-gu should be put behind bars for 20 years. Details coming up in headlines. And in business news, the race for rechargeable batteries. Who's in the lead? We'll tell you on In Print.
Getting smarter. Appliances are evolving with improved voice and speech recognition technology. From childcare to emergencies, devices that offer greater sensitivity and accurate response. Bodily audible. Cracking joints, growling stomachs, burps, and hiccups are some of the sounds our bodies make. Mere bodily functions, or an indicator of something more serious. On Tuesday, February 4th, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And a good Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome to Korea Today.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Now, today is one of and the first of the 24 seasonal divisions here in Korea, Ipchun, which means the entrance of spring. Now, it does not feel like spring, and people on the peninsula are going to be greeted with sub-zero temperatures. We're talking the bitter cold.
That's right. It feels anything but Ipchun, the beginning of spring. In fact, cold wave advisories have been issued for most parts of Korea, including the provinces of Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-do, and Gyeongsang-do. But Seoulites will have it. The morning lows will dip as low as minus 10 degrees Celsius right here in the capital. And there's a heavy snow warning issued in the islands of Ulleung-do and Dokdo. So pretty much the whole nation will be frozen.
That's right. That's right. And that's very popular.
Right. So let it go of the idea of Ipchun, the beginning of spring. Right?
All right. For all those heading out to work and school, wherever you may be on the peninsula, you need to bundle up, as Idami always says, and we'll be hearing more from the young lady later on Korea Today.
But first, the day's headlines with Na-hyun Kyung.
Breaking its week-long silence, North Korea finally responded to South Korea's offer to hold talks for inter-Korean family reunions. Shortly after Pyongyang's response on Monday, Seoul's Unification Ministry said the two sides agreed to hold working-level talks on Wednesday.
The notice suggested holding a working-level meeting between Red Cross officials on either February 5th or 6th at the South's convenience on the North Korean side of the truce village of Panmunjom.
The South Korean government will try to have the family reunions held as soon as possible, considering the urgency of the matter.
The list of those who will attend the working-level meeting will be exchanged between the two sides today. The final date and location of the family reunion will likely be finalized at Wednesday's meeting. South Korea had proposed holding the event from the 17th to the 22nd of this month at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea. The U.S. state of Virginia is one step closer to ensuring their students learn that the body of water between Korea and Japan is called the East Sea, along with the Japanese name Sea of Japan. The Virginia House Education Committee passed a bill which requires textbooks in Virginia to use both names by a majority of 18-3 on Monday local time. The bill now heads to the full House on Thursday, where it is widely expected to win approval. A similar bill has already passed the Virginia State Senate. Despite Tokyo's campaign to block the bill's passing, Seoul-based Yonhap News reports Virginia State Governor Terry McAuliffe has said he intends to sign the bill once it passes the full assembly. 20 years in prison is what prosecutors think the indicted incumbent far-left lawmaker Lee Seok-gu should face for allegedly conspiring a rebellion against the government. At the final court session at Suwon District Court on Monday, the prosecution requested Lee to be put under a 10-year suspension, which will ban him from holding any public titles and also strip him of voting rights for 10 years after he finishes his 20-year jail term. The defense counsel said the so-called revolutionary revolutionary organization, the leftist group, which the prosecution claims Lee to be the leader of, is an organization with no true form whose existence is claimed only by the country's spy agency. Lee's first sentence is scheduled to come on February 17th. Observers say the verdict will likely influence the Constitutional Court's ruling on whether the far-left Unified Progressive Party, where Lee is a member of, should be disbanded. On the first day of trading since the Lunar New Year holiday, the Korean markets were rattled by the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision last week to further taper its monetary stimulus measures. The benchmark Kospi dropped 1.1% on Monday to finish at 1,920. The Korean won also declined by the most in more than 7 months against the U.S. dollar.
As the U.S. continues to taper its quantitative easing, it has caused confusion in emerging markets. So relatively safer assets such as the dollar and the yen have strengthened while the won has weakened, prompting the exchange rate to jump.
The local currency dropped by 1.3% to finish at 1,084 won against the greenback. Given Korea's strong economic fundamentals, analysts in Seoul predict the weak trend will not last for long. However, financial authorities say they are keeping a close eye on market changes.
And good morning, everyone. Time for a look through your newspaper headlines now. When's the last time you took a group picture at your workplace? Well, as Korea's parliament opened its extraordinary session yesterday, its lawmakers gathered to do just that. And 동아일보's image title reads, "Lawmakers take first group picture in 66 years." The last time they did so being before the Korean War in 1948 when the Constitution was established. The captain says the lawmakers are shouting harmony and coexistence there while joining hands. And on that note, the title cheekily adds that it would be nice if they could join hands on passing laws for the livelihoods of the people as well. And despite the sizable presence, not everyone was present. UPP lawmaker Lee Seocho-gu, charged on plotting an insurrection, was absent, as was independent lawmaker An Chul-soo, who said that prior appointments had run late. But this is what 282 of the current 298 lawmakers being in one shot looks like. All right, we'll go ahead and scoot on over to 조선일보 next. As young graduates prepare to jump into the job market this spring, 조선일보's headline notes a trend which it calls the resurrection of science and engineering. The subheadlines add that the top four groups, Samsung, Hyundai Motor, SK, and LG, had some 70 to 80% of its new hires come from sciences and engineering backgrounds last year. And the paper interprets this trend as the companies need for their staff to have specialized expertise, as the lead has one unidentified human resources official saying that someone with a science and engineering background from a university outside of the capital city had a better chance of landing a job than a university graduate in Seoul with a business degree. The subheadline notes that this trend continues as the employee works up the ladder, as more CEOs are found to have science and engineering backgrounds as well. And next up is 경향신문. We'll go ahead and take a look at this article here. Its headline reads, 20 years sought for Lee Seocho-gu, sentenced to come on the 17th. This is also a major story this morning, as you heard in our headlines earlier. The article adds that the leftist lawmaker maintained his innocence in his final statements, and prosecutors also have recommended 15 years in prison for the 5 co-defendants believed to have assisted Lee. Next up is 중앙일보, and its front page image showcases its special series titled A Country Where Senior Citizens Are Also Happy. And on the left is 67-year-old Lee Young-sil, a former law student from the country's top women's university and now a star sports dance instructor. And on the right is 65-year-old Cho Yun-se, a former bank branch manager who is seeing a second wind working at a local movie theater. These are just a couple of the faces of the so-called new silver generation, the paper says, 60 to 74-year-olds who are not ready to throw in the towel on work just yet. And finally, let's wrap with a look at the front page of Made in Business newspaper. Its main headline reads, "A new gold mine. Korea, China, Japan compete over rechargeable batteries." The rechargeable battery industry includes those for mobile devices, of course, as well as a new growth area, electric cars. Korean companies have managed to maintain their lead in the industry since beating its Japanese counterparts back in 2011. And as the graph shows, Korea's share in the market is 42%. Followed by Japan at 34% and China at 18%. A race for the so-called rechargeable battery Big Bang has the three neighboring countries competing for not only new technology and patents, but talent as well. And the subheadlines add that Samsung has nabbed a contract to supply rechargeable batteries to BMW. This as the Chinese government is investing in the sector, and Japan's Panasonic is eyeing to recapture its former lead. And with that, we'll wrap your look at what's in print on this Tuesday. Next up are your closing numbers from Monday's Market Action.
Many people waking up this morning to sub-zero temperatures combined with the wind chill factor. We're talking very cold.
Right, minus 20, some experts say. It's going to feel very, very cold. Let's go right over to our Dami who joins us from outdoors. She must be freezing. I can see her breath too. Good morning.
Good morning.
Cold morning, everyone. Actually, good morning. Today I'm reporting live from Seocho-gu, Seoul. So today here in Korea, according to the lunar calendar, it is Ip-chun, which is the start of spring. However, this morning, you can see my breath. It is very cold this morning. As a matter of fact, there are some cold wave alerts and advisories that are being scattered throughout most of the peninsula. Thankfully, here in Seoul, we haven't been issued one yet, but morning temperatures right now, it's minus 10 degrees Celsius. Now, like Young and Minjung mentioned, there are signs of strong, sharp winds that are blowing right now, which will drop our body temperatures all the way down to minus 20 degrees. So later in the day, our highs will still be below zero at minus 5 degrees. All I can say is make sure to bundle up from head to toe today. Now, this cold snap is going to continue into tomorrow. The Weather Center is suggesting everyone to double-check their facilities, make sure nothing's frozen, and of course, most importantly, take care of your health by staying warm. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather around Korea. Here in Seoul, highs are at a freezing minus 5, Daejeon is minus 3, Daegu and Gangneung at 1, Busan the warmest at 3, Gwangju at minus 1, Jeju at 2 degrees. Now, the climate will start to grow mild on Thursday, so hang in until then. That was your look at the weather forecast. I'll be back on a more spring-filled note.
Recently, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe delivered a speech at the country's Diet, saying that he will follow the spirit of the so-called Murayama Statement, which is considered a war apology from Japan. However, Abe omitted any references that acknowledge the country's invasion of other countries and its colonial rule over them. This has been interpreted as a move signaling that he does not believe Japan's acts at the time were those of imperialism and invasion. Not only that, last Tuesday, Tokyo ruled that it would issue textbook guidelines for middle and high schools that claim sovereignty over Korea's Dokdo Island. Japan also expressed its intention to unilaterally file a lawsuit with the International Court of Justice regarding the Dokdo issue. Abe has displayed strong right-wing tendencies by taking increasingly bolder steps. We'll examine his intentions and how long this drive will last.
And for that, joining us is Professor Yoon Byung-nam from Seogang University. Thank you for coming in this morning, Professor.
My pleasure.
So let's start with where Abe stands and why he's taking such bold steps when it comes to Japan's past wartime aggressions. Does it come from his genuine beliefs, or is this all merely a very carefully calculated political move?
I think we have to look at this, new Abe from the both aspects. From his personality and his historical view. At the same time, you have to look at the Japanese people are changing. They go to more right compared to the several years ago because of the long recession and they have aging population, something like that. And first of all, I like to point out Abe from his personal,
family
background and historical perspective. He is from conservative political family from Yamaguchi. His grandfather was a pre-war minister of the wartime cabinet, and he was sentenced, several years prison, but he was released, and he became president, the prime minister in the late 1950s.
So you're talking about Mr. Nobusuke Kishi.
Very important. Family influence. But, as you know, the Prime Minister Abe, he served first term and several years ago. At the time, he was, more reluctant, compared to the present Abe, because he only served only for a year.
So more reluctant to show right-wing tendency.
And then he something like he got to know the populists want this kind of right-wing, policies compared to the 5 years ago. And so he issued several, policies to strengthening the right-wing, the stances in Japanese politics. For example, revising, textbooks and also he visited, Yasukuni Shrine, even if Korea and China strongly opposed his visit and something like that. But I think here we have to look both aspects, Abe's personal view at the same time, changing Japanese atmosphere.
So he realized that by him showing right-wing tendency will bring the nation together and also making him popular as well on the political realm as well. So he's conducting more right-wing movements is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, last week Japan brought attention back on filing a case with the International Court of Justice on the Dokdo Island issue. But they know that it's not going to be possible without Korea's consent. So why bring the attention back on that issue again at this point? Is it also in line with what you just said?
That's the measure which Japan can take for the most hardline measure to counter Korea's effort to keep the Dokdo. So, but even if Japan cannot file a lawsuit to ICJ, the Japanese move can be effective in strengthening the Japanese argument by putting Korea's position on defensive. And, I'm not quite sure that Japan would actually file the suit. It is interesting to point out that Japan never mentioned the ICJ solution in the case of the Senkaku, where
the Hallyu Islands in the
Japan
East China
and
Sea.
China has a controversy.
Right.
So
just the media talking about it will help Japan in gaining attention in that regard.
I think so. Yeah.
So how is the Japanese public feeling about Abe's right-wing movement, though? Is it working this time compared to 2006 and 2007?
Well, that's why the LDP and Abe can regain the power by appealing to the Japanese populace. But among the Japanese, you have some also strong opposition to this, turning to the right-wing position in Abe's and LDP's position, but there is a growing the concern among Japanese, Japanese economy, even if Abe has a radical economic boost measures, something like Abenomics, cold Abenomics, but Japanese the economy is gaining very slowly, and still the future is not very bright for the Japanese economy. At the same time, you have, the rise of China in Asia,
both economic and political front as well.
And militarily.
So some experts are saying that there is a wind of change when it comes to the Japanese public compared to when he first took office.
Yeah, that gives some Japanese some kind of worry over the future, and Abe and LDP, is appealing to this, people's and the anxiety, something like that.
All right. So neighboring countries, including the U.S., are not really comfortable with Abe's movement at this point, especially when it comes to the stability in Northeast Asia. But Japan really doesn't seem to be considering this to be a threat or a problem or a concern. Why is that? Why is Japan not so afraid?
Well, you can say that, but actually Japan is very, meticulous in dealing with the U.S. Look at the case of the collective self-defense measure. When they announce the self-defense, the collective measures, collective self-defense, they are very careful in dealing with the U.S. And U.S. to some extent recognize the Japanese, policy change, and sometimes they endorsed, even if Korea and China expressed their great concern over these issues. But, I think Abe went too far by visiting, Yasukuni Shrine. And at this time, the U.S. government and U.S. embassy in Japan expressed their disappointment. This is very rare case of, diplomatic dialogue. Right. So, and the U.S. are realizing that his visit to Yasukuni could, anger, Chinese and Koreans. So, and they definitely believe, he went too far. So that's why he sent his envoy to Washington to persuade his position.
His brother.
Still, there is a tension between Japan and U.S.
Right. So we'll have to see how the Japan and the ties between Japan and the United States will unfold at this point. But Abe taking bold steps, like you said, it looks like it's not going to stop at this point. And a lot of the issues do involve Korea in it as well. So is there a way for the Korean government to wisely counteract Japan's right-wing movement or the nationalistic sentiment at this point?
Yeah, I do not think that the Korean government and Korean people have, many options here. Yeah, since they asked the Japanese government recognize their war responsibility and historical responsibility, but instead the Japanese government and Abe, the president, they do not recognize his responsibility. Instead, he issued several statements provoking, provoke Korean people and the politicians. So it is, and so this becomes some kind of precondition for the Japanese government to open talks between the Prime Minister and Korean President. So President Park, she has expressed her intention not to meet Japanese leader unless Japanese leader recognizes, historical responsibility clearly. So it is very, difficult. The two government leaders do not meet in 2 years, almost 2 years. It is very rare, and we have many things to deal with, but two leaders come across in several multilateral meetings.
Right.
But
so
there is no
one-on-one bilateral summit talks, right? Meeting. So at this point, the South Korean government really doesn't have any options. But what President Park Geun-hye is doing is the best.
You can keep pressure on Japanese. But in this case, we have to be careful. When you have a side with the Chinese, we have a common, interest. in these issues. But Japanese, as I mentioned before, has a great concern over the rise of China. So we have to be very careful in dealing with Japan.
Right, so keeping the balance would be key in this
And also
case.
we have to be more rational and persuasive and be patient.
Be patient seems to be the key. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Yoon Byung-nam, for joining us today
welcome.
and sharing your insight.
Thank you.
Still to come on Korea Today, from looking after your child to keeping yourself safe with surveillance technology, many devices are better equipped with voice recognition functions. We take a look at smart electronics that can detect much more from the sounds around.
From Taekwondo and kimchi to K-pop and Korean electronics, Hallyu has become a tool and a driving force in the spread of Korean culture, leading to the establishment of the World Association for Hallyu Studies. Professor In-gyu of Korea University and Director of General Affairs of the World Association for Hallyu Studies, or WAS, joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Now, WAS is marking its first year since its establishment. Tell us about some of the activities and the accomplishments.
When I came back to Korea, like about 3 years ago, I had an idea of creating probably the most interesting Korean version of so-called World Association of Studies of some sort. And that I had an imagination of promoting Hallyu Studies. People were saying that, what is Hallyu Studies? I talk about Korean studies. No. Korean studies is something that Westerners or Japanese had created back then in the colonial times. But we want to promote a new study about Korea. It's about new Korea. It's a post-colonial. It's much more developing. It's not really developed, post-developing, rather a very exciting aspect of Korean studies. That's what the Hallyu Studies is all about. And we wanted to create an organization that is dedicated to the study.
Currently, Hallyu is centered around Korean dramas as well as Korean music, right? President Park Geun-hye wants to expand this to the areas of fine arts and even traditional culture. What's your take on this expansion?
I welcome sincerely that the Korean government is taking a very positive attitudes toward Hallyu revolution. It's very likely that we're going to have different kinds of Hallyu content to be popular in the future, in the near future, such as gugak, traditional Korean music, or even Korean sports, Korean policy making, designs, how we became so developed in the world in less than 6 decades. Those kind of things could be future Hallyu content. Yeah.
Now, K-pop is in the center of spreading Korean culture. It's spread to areas of South America, Europe, the Asias, and much more. And even the United States at one point with Psy's great hit single, Gangnam Style, as well as Gentleman. But it does not seem to really be able to sustain in the American market. Now, we're talking about pop music here. How feasible is it, do you think, for a Korean pop artist, a pure Korean pop artist, to make it and sustain in the American music market?
Take an example of Japanese anime or manga. That's very popular in the United States, mainly because they have Sony Pictures, Universal. Those distribution, Japanese spend a lot of money building their own channels and networks to distribute their manga, anime content. We haven't got anything in the United States. So it's like, hitting the wall without any solution, right? The wall is so thick and big. It's the United States. They set up that hurdle for all these non-European, non-Japanese content makers, providers. So it's a revolutionary thing that Koreans somehow used YouTube to penetrate through the wall and hit the popular music market in the United States. That's the beginning. And then I think Korean government and Korean producers will realize, and they probably have already realized it, that they desperately need something that Koreans have built in the United States in terms of distribution.
Okay, now let's talk about sustainability. You mentioned that at these forums and these meetings that many scholars said that Hallyu is definitely sustainable. But there's also the opposite. The opinions out there that are saying Hallyu is at its peak, it has nowhere to go except down. What do you think about the sustainability of Hallyu? I mean, in all different forms, in music, dramas, I mean, the expansion of Hallyu and more.
That's a good question because I heard that question all the time from a lot of people, laymen, professionals, and experts. Some people were saying even like, oh, the Hallyu will be died out in 2 years. Right? I've been hearing that for the last 10 years myself.
But it's been growing.
Growing. I mean, it's not 2 year, 1 year thing. It's a sustainable long-term project because its content is very unique. It's very Korean, but at the same time, it is very universal. It's about mothers, it's about families, it's about women, it's about children, right? It's just a family thing. So, in terms of drama, K-pop is much more universal than dramas because it's all about Western beat music, dance music. Dance is universal. They don't use a lot of Korean lyric. So, and also, the market is being diversified over the years. It's not just Japanese market, it's not just Chinese market, but now we have Hallyu fans in the Middle East, Hallyu fans in Russia, Hallyu fans in Peru, all those expanding atmosphere, diversification of fan groups. That's much more sustainable power than big markets like in Japan or the United States. So it's pretty much a subculture movement, not a mainstream culture movement, through YouTube. As long as we have YouTube, I think Hallyu has a future.
Arirang TV and Arirang Radio, our network has been broadcasting Korean content overseas to the world for over a decade. I mean, we're talking since 1998. What do you think about the role of channels and networks like Arirang TV, who's working and whose main priority is to get the Korean content out there?
So I think there's a huge niche market here because YouTube is the only mass media channel that Hallyu fans can tap into and watch and download content. But if Arirang goes out there without any hurdles, without any local broadcasting regulations, then Hallyu fans have more options to choose from to get their content directly from Korea.
All right, well, you know, if you would have asked me 10 years ago that there was going to be study courses, actual courses taught in university regarding Hallyu, I would have said, I don't believe you, but it's happening.
It's happening.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
As we mentioned at the top of the hour, today is Ip-chun, the beginning of spring, but the weather doesn't feel like spring. We could surely use some signs of spring. And what's a classic sign of spring? Flowers. Our Idami joins us from a flower market from Yangjae, Seoul. Good morning back to you, Dami.
All right, thanks, Minjang. So I'm back reporting live from Yangjae, Seoul, and it is Ip-chun according to the lunar calendar, which is the beginning of spring. Now, I know the weather outside is freezing cold, but there is a place that is filled with the spring-like atmosphere, and it's none other than the Yangjae Flower Market. Now, back in the days, it was a seasonal custom to hang on your door what is called an Ip-chun-bang. Now, Ip-chun-bang is a piece of paper that says Ip-chun Daegil written on it, basically welcoming or wishing for a lucky and joyous life for the spring season. Wow, I mean, the flower market is like a field of flowers. It's filled with beautiful scent of flowers everywhere. All the various colors and fully bloomed flowers really makes you forget about the cold weather outside. Now I'm actually starting to feel a bit cozy inside with all these gorgeous flowers. Now they say that amongst all the flowers that we see here, spring flowers have been quite popular. Flowers that we just saw here are some freesias. There are also some pansy, daffodils, and many more spring flowers that bloom during this season. But one of my favorites has to be the tulip. I don't know why, just something about the tulip reminds me of spring, and I know my mom loves these too, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and take some home with me. Now, if you want to change the atmosphere at your home, then definitely buying some flowers or some flower pots will really help out. And they say that when it comes to choosing flowers, you don't want to choose the buds, but the ones that are slightly blossomed. And also you want to check the petals, see if they're distinct, and if the stems are long, those are also some good signs as well. Now, something that you want to keep in mind is other than Sunday, for the business hours, other than Sunday, they are open every day starting from midnight to 1 p.m. So make sure to double check the hours and don't come here when they're closed. You can always find more information on their website. This is your look at the Yangjae Flower Market. I'm Ida-mi, Korea Today.
Now it feels a little bit like spring.
Yeah, we see the flowers in the markets, but not blossoming anywhere in Korea just yet. Maybe in Jeju, right? Now, voice and speech recognition technology has been creeping its way onto our mobile phones, into our cars, as well as our home appliances. Voice and speech recognition has become very popular and is evolving day by day. Travis Klein joins us to talk more. Good morning.
Good morning, Travis.
Can you imagine if you were to say something, all of a sudden it would appear? Like, for instance,
food.
There you go. You have pizza in front of you, or kimchi jjigae, a stew. If you could use this application, what would you want? How do you think you would use this in technology?
Like, if I stepped out of a shower and then I want some towels, maybe give me a towel. I need a servant for that, I suppose.
Or when you have two kids running around in your living room all day, you can just say, stop, off.
Right, put to bed.
Well, I don't know if you can control your kids like that, but let's say there are like certain machines that you say, manicure for Minjung, and you stick your hands there and they do the trick just for you. Or you have like a robot that gives you a massage. There, all of a sudden. So voice recognition software is what we're going to take a look at today. Now, it's probably not that yet advanced, but we're going to take a look at some of the products that are making a scene. A television where you can change the channels. Or GPS systems that allow you to set your destination. All voice activated. Smartphones allow you to make calls and surf the web following voice commands. These products making life more convenient with voice recognition. Recently, a company in Korea released a baby care product that uses voice recognition and drew much attention. The device can alert people with hearing impairments or working parents when the baby is crying. This device might look like a two-tiered snowman or maybe even a mood light or just a toy that's in a baby's room, but if a baby cries, it actually has a sensor that can detect it. When the baby does cry, a sensor attached to the main device detects this and sends a notification to the parent's wearable bangle device. So depending on if the baby's hungry, if it's just alone, or maybe it needs to be changed, the lights on the sensor are going to change along with the cry. Whether it be from being hungry or not feeling well, the device sends out different light and vibration signals, alerting the parent of why the baby is crying and lets them take appropriate measures. This notification not only comes through the bangle, but also text messages on the smartphone.
Babies express their feelings through crying, and there are small differences in their crying patterns. By showing that pattern through vibrations, you can tell why the baby is crying.
There's also a new voice recognition technology for smartphones. So the smartphones have a voice recognition software, and what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm going to show you some of the functions in a moment. Please help! Unlike previous technologies where you had to activate the smartphone for voice recognition, this can be used even while on standby. In the case of accidents or if you sustain an injury where you can't use your hands, you can use your voice to activate an emergency call.
The service connects to 112 or 119 in cases of emergencies. And not only that, it can trace your location to determine where the request for help is coming from.
Meanwhile, surveillance cameras that recognize voices have been introduced to prevent crimes and accidents, and also allow for a swift and speedy response. At the site where a hit and run has taken place, the surveillance camera, which has detected a scream, points in that direction to capture it. The police and an ambulance are quickly dispatched to the scene, and the driver is caught on site.
The device analyzes the scream from an existing database and looks at the characteristics of its frequency. This allows it to distinguish a scream from a car explosion.
The voice recognition security cameras were unveiled last year, and this year they will be introduced to local governments. In the case of accidents or unusual events, the scene can be zoomed in on at the control center, allowing for a swifter response. Voice recognition technology can be implemented in many different fields, and smarter products will help shape the future.
Recognizing and deciphering the baby's cries would make a lot of parents' lives a lot happier. Now, but there are many baby products out there that's similar to this. How is this one different? Called Babble, too.
Exactly. The shape is a little bit different. We were discussing, right, when we were showing the video, why it's shaped like a two-tiered snowman. Well, it's going to be by the baby because that's the sensor, and then it sends the information to the wristwatch or the bangle. Now, it's like that because in case the baby were to knock it over, it actually just pops back up. It's very durable as well. So the reason why it's a little bit different than the existing devices is because the devices now, usually they analyze data and identify some of the common characteristics and create statistics upon that. But how can you do that for all babies, right?
Yeah.
So this particular device, the Babble, it uses a, well, it has like a sensor, a smart sensor, because it's unique to the baby's voice. So it analyzes that data, and then usually it sends the information to the bangle, as I showed before. So what's different about that is that after maybe a parent and a baby spend a week together, so it gets to recognize the baby's voices, then it can analyze that data and send it to the bangle and send it to the smart.
Exactly, to that one baby.
It's specifically customized, personalized child care system, so that's what makes it a little bit different, so it has greater accuracy in telling you specifically the things about your baby.
Right, so it's a smart device.
Right.
It is. That works, right? Okay, let's talk about the emergency voice-activated call system. Now, I would imagine that if you are in an emergency situation, you're not going to remember all these commands. Are these preset commands, or can you customize this?
It's not preset. You can actually use your own commands. The only problem with that, though, is if you were to use a phrase like help or oh my goodness, something like that, it doesn't necessarily, our voices aren't as, I guess, easy to analyze like babies are. Babies' cries can be analyzed, but our voices are so much more difficult to analyze in a certain way. So what it does is if you were to use those safety words, then it'll call the emergency numbers. But the thing about that is at the same time, if you were to play like a Beatles song, like the help, I need somebody help, you know that song, right? If it starts playing, it's going to call the emergency number as well. It can't distinguish other people's voices, or yours in particular.
Okay.
Interesting.
That is one thing that, one drawback to that, right? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Some smart devices that offer a lot of convenience at the same time offer babies call for help, right?
Right.
Not just help, but, you know, for diaper changes and all that. Now, still ahead on Korea Today, are you suffering from uncontrollable gas or unstoppable hiccups? Now, knees cracking and shoulders popping, this is your body trying to tell you something. We take a look at the various sounds that can act as health indicators and alert you of potential problems in the body.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with Super Bowl 48, which took place at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Now, the temperatures were a lot warmer than people thought it would be, but the final score shocked fans more than anything. Now, it became one of the most lopsided Super Bowl victory in NFL history. The Seahawks scored against the Denver Broncos in every way possible as they claimed their first Super Bowl title with a 43-8 victory. Not only was it their first title, it was also the first time such score came out in the Super Bowl, as Seattle's Malcolm Smith became the third linebacker to win the Super Bowl MVP after intercepting Peyton Manning for a 69-yard touchdown and a fumble recovery. Now, back in the States, Super Bowl Sundays usually calls for parties amongst friends and families, but a lot of people also bet on the games as well. But big question after Sunday is, did Floyd Mayweather bet over $10 million on the Denver Broncos? Well, according to several Las Vegas bookies, the undefeated boxer allegedly placed $10.4 million on the Denver Broncos to win the Super Bowl. Although some of Mayweather's acquaintances claim that the rumors are untrue, the boxer is known to be a big money gambler. Now nicknamed Money Mayweather, he topped Forbes' list of highest paid athletes back in 2012 and Sports Illustrated's earnings list in 2013. And speaking of high-profile athletes, only if you're Kim Yeon-ah do you garner so much attention on something so simple like the official Sochi athletes profile page. With the official Sochi profile page for the athletes updated, fans here in the nations looked up figure skater Kim Yeon-ah and were pretty shocked that she was quote-unquote only 165 centimeters tall. Now, the profile also lists surfing on the internet as her favorite hobby and names Michelle Kwan as her hero. Now, the official profile includes detailed info about each athlete participating in the Sochi Winter Games. And finishing things off, while all the fans here in the nation were interested in Kim Yeon-ah's latest Olympic profile, fans in Japan had their eyes on a 4-part special on Mao Asada that Nikkan Sports wrote to commemorate the 2014 Sochi Winter Games. And while the series included reasons for why the 24-year-old Japanese figure skater is set to retire after the Olympics, many fans were surprised to find out that she will not be pulling off her famous triple axel during this year's Olympics. And according to the report, they felt that she can actually get more points without the triple axel, as they added that they found the secrets to why Kim Yeon-ah outscores Mao Asada. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
So around this time every morning, our stomachs begin to growl, and there are many different sounds coming from our bodies, knuckles cracking, shoulders popping, there you go, right? And passing gas, of course, one too many times.
I can't do that on air.
Don't do that on air. And these could be telltale signs of something more dangerous. And Dr. Alice Hyung-Young-dan from Samsung Medical Center joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. So snap, crackle, pop, grumble, growl, these sounds usually are a source of curiosity for a lot of people. Sometimes they can be a cause for concern, though, as well. So I'm glad that we're able to talk about these bodily noises this morning.
All right, so we're going to take a look at some of these bodily noises and what they could actually mean in this next report. Take a look.
It can be constant growling in your stomach, letting out gas frequently, or burping and hiccuping. All these sounds carry hidden information about your health. First, pay close attention to sounds that come from your throat. Normally, hiccups should only last a few minutes or sometimes up to a few hours, but if this condition continues for more than a day, it could be related to a physical disorder. It could signal damage to a nerve in the diaphragm, so you should look out for pneumonia, pleurisy, or gastritis. That large burp that you let out after eating is not a great issue of concern if it has no smell and associated traits. But if you experience acid reflux or have a bitter sensation in your mouth, it may be a sign that you have a peptic ulcer. When you have a cold for a prolonged period of time, it can lead to a change in your voice, but if this lasts for more than 2 weeks, it could be a signal of other problems.
If you have a hoarse voice for a long time, it can be a symptom of having reflux esophagitis. It may come from a continual reflux of stomach acid, and you can confirm this through an endoscopy.
Second, look out for sounds from your stomach. The growling that comes from it is natural as the stomach and intestines move together. But if this sound lasts for more than 5 minutes, it is likely there's a problem with your body. If you hear the growl too often or if it comes with abdominal distension, there's a possibility that you have irritable bowel syndrome or an intestinal inflammation. Adults let out gas on an average of 13 times a day. This gas comes from digesting food in the system. But if you see a change in the frequency of this despite not having changed your diet, you may have a colon disorder.
If you find yourself letting out bad gas more than 30 times a day, it's mostly due to your eating habits. But not only that, it could also be because of constipation, colorectal cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, or irritable bowel syndrome.
Third, sounds that you hear from your joints are also worth looking out for. When you move your body, ligaments and muscles rub against joints and create sounds. But if you hear a particular sound repeatedly, even if you haven't sustained an injury, you should receive a checkup. If you hear sounds when opening or closing your mouth, it could be a jaw joint disorder. If you experience a crackling sensation in the shoulder or feel like something is caught when moving, it could be a rotator cuff tear. In the case of cracking sounds from the knees, it may mean that the cartilage in the kneecap has softened.
When exercising your knees, if the discomfort or pain comes from the front along with sounds, it could be a sign of chondromalacia. This refers to when the cartilage that surrounds the knee joint connecting to the thigh becomes less flexible and softens. If you leave this condition this way for a long time, the cartilage can crack and lead to degenerative arthritis.
The very sounds you hear in your body can be a signal about your health, so it is important to pay close attention.
So when it comes to noise coming from your knee, like we just saw, is it, I mean, if a simple sound is like a symptom, or how painful are we talking about? Because I had a friend who had cartilage softening, and he just, kept popping it, like making fun and popping it, but then is it painful?
Yes, so it can be a painful condition. So we're talking about chondromalacia patelli, otherwise known as patellofemoral pain syndrome. And this occurs when the cartilage under the kneecap, and this should be sort of a tough padding that's under the kneecap, gets damaged due to overuse or injury. Typically, the pain occurs in the front of the knee, when you're going up or down the stairs, when you're kneeling, squatting, or sitting with your knees in a bent position for a long time. If the pain persists and the clicking persists for more than 3 or 4 days, you should see your doctor because there are treatments available.
Okay, well, speaking of cartilage injuries, I've had a rotator cuff injury some time back, but then I've also been diagnosed with frozen shoulders as well. Now, what's the difference there between the two?
Right, so there are lots of different causes of pain, stiffness, and clicks coming from the shoulder. As you mentioned, rotator cuff injury and adhesive capsulitis, or frozen shoulder, as it's also known, are two of the more common causes. So in adhesive capsulitis, the capsule or the protective sheath over the shoulder becomes thickened and inflamed. There are typically 3 different stages. The first is it hurts, there's pain, usually disturbing sleep.
Intense pain.
Right. The second stage is very severe stiffness, such that the shoulder is kind of frozen in a certain position.
Move.
The third stage is called the thaw stage, and usually the pain and flexibility improve. In rotator cuff injury, basically the rotator cuff is a bunch of tendons and muscles that keep our arm attached to our body. If you have injury of the rotator cuff, you can have weakness, you could have pain, but flexibility is usually not as affected as in frozen shoulder. So a person with rotator cuff injury can usually lift his hand over his head, either on his own or with help, but in a person with frozen shoulder, there's usually an angle beyond which the shoulder joint just simply will not budge. That's the difference.
Too painful, huh? And this man over here loves to crack knuckles, and he doesn't do it for himself, he does it for other people too, right? Don't you? He loves doing that.
It feels really, really 시원해 in Korean. You know?
Right. Liberating almost.
Yeah, very, very.
Is that bad or good or what for you?
So there's no evidence to link cracking your knuckles with the formation of arthritis, but it can be linked with damage to the ligaments and the tendons of the finger joint. So if you have this need to release the tension in your hands, I suggest actually doing this exercise where you make a fist with your thumb on the outside, kind of clench it gently, hold this for about 10 seconds, and then fan out your fingers as much as you can and hold this for about 20 seconds. Okay, and then you can sort of shake out your hands and do this 4 times in a row. Repeat this, and this will really keep your fingers flexible and release the tension in your hands. This is a better method than cracking your knuckles.
All right.
How about we end the show on this note, exercising our hands and fingers. Thank you, Doctor, for your time this morning.
Thank you. And some great advice for our viewers as well. If you have a habit of cracking hands,
don't crack knuckles.
Don't do
this.
It's better for you.
That brings us to the end of our show today.
All right, enjoy this very cold day. Do bundle up if you are heading out to work this morning, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, stop it, Minjung.